Hello, my regulars, and welcome new listeners to the Reese on the Regular podcast. Today, I have a very special guest joining me. We're here with Colin.
What's up, guys? Yeah, how are you? Yeah, that was my cue, guys, by the way.
I'm going to say I'm here with Colin.
Yeah, I'm kind of prepared.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
But we'll try that again. What's up, guys?
What's up?
Thanks, everybody. I'm here with Reese. Thanks so much for having me, Reese.
Of
I
course.
appreciate it. It's been a while. I don't know, since probably last time you went to like a conference or like slung some blades or something like
I
that.
know.
I imagine, right?
We
Yeah.
know each other through our Cutco knife sales.
Amen,
So
brother.
don't take that a different way.
Oh, yeah, slinging deals. I don't know. I didn't think about what I just said.
Yeah.
But, okay, cool. So I'm from Vermont. If you can't tell, I kind of look like I'm from Vermont, give or take. I have my nice Vermont hat on. I'm just a regular guy like everybody else, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
That Reese just has like regular guys on here. I think that's pretty cool. I do a little bit of real estate stuff. Obviously, I do work with Cutco. It's kind of my main gig. Obviously, working with business owners, clients in terms of the gifting side of my business, but then also obviously residential. Everybody needs good stuff for their home, things like that. I'm not really anybody special. I'm just somebody.
Just a simple guy on here.
Just a simple guy.
Simple
Just
guy.
hanging out, you know?
That's all we need. And so did you drive all the way here from Vermont? I meant to
Sure
ask
did.
you.
Yep,
Just for
came
this?
from the sticks today.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Guys, commitment right here.
Yeah.
But I'm excited because today we're going to talk about something I've never had on my podcast, which is some real estate stuff.
Ooh.
Because
excited.
Colin knows a little bit about that and I know not a lot about it. And it's something I've always been interested in. I feel like a lot of you guys probably have had an interest in it as well. So I feel like this will be a really cool learning episode and a chance for Colin to just shine a little bit. So I'm excited to get into it. And I kind of want to just start with learning about just the journey, just where you started, where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to kind of like my sales journey with getting into Cutco and things like that. I never even thought about doing real estate. It was not even in my cards. Same with like sales and things like that. I never wanted to do it. My parents own an auto repair shop in Vermont. That's kind of what I grew up doing, was working on cars, like brake changes, oil changes, things like that. Like just speaking wasn't really a big thing. My grandfather, I had a stutter growing up, so he was always nervous about that. My dad, he's not the best speaker. I mean, obviously my dad does sales just because, like, you know, whatever business you run, doesn't matter if you're selling a product or a service, you're still in sales. The big thing with real estate is I started working and selling to a lot of real estate agents for their home, for residential stuff. And I knew we did have a program, you know, and things like that, and how we could, you know, get into working with more realtors and stuff like that. But I just didn't really want to get into it at first. And one day, one of the, you know, a good family friend of my grandparents, her name's Bonnie, is in real estate, and she was like, "You just got to do it." And I was like, "I don't really know." She was like, I'm telling you, you'd make a ton of money, just do it." So eventually she got me like all set up and everything. Basically, you just take an online course. It's pretty simple. It's long. Like
Pretty simple, but
like
long.
Very long. It's like the most time-consuming thing like you've ever done. Yeah, it's like you have a 40 hours that you have to have of like the exam stuff. You have to go through like the tests. It's like a 100-question test, everything like that. You have to get them right. That was not good for me.
How did you study for that? Just
I don't study.
or did you know?
No, I don't study.
Bad question.
Yeah, it's probably not a good question on that one. But yeah, I don't study much for anything. When it comes to real estate, it's really kind of self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
You know, the terms, the definitions of the words that you're using, it's really not that hard. That's kind of how I got into it. Was just like family friend of my grandparents. So
Yeah.
Now we're here.
Yeah, and so you took the test, you passed.
Yep.
You
So
passed
I'm
the
like,
first time?
yeah. So I passed the first time. Once you go through the testing, you take your exam and everything. You're not actually like a licensed agent. You can like apply for a license, things like that, but you have to have like an associate broker. So you have to work with an actual firm before you can actually become like an actual agent itself.
Like independently?
Yeah, well, so you have to work with a team. You can't like go out on your own and work independently and like sell real estate and like run your own firm without working for a firm.
Okay, so pass the exam. Now you're just doing real estate in the Vermont area?
Yeah, so I'm kind of like right now I'm kind of in like a just barely beginner stage, right?
Okay.
Like you want to find a couple leads. It's like when we first start, you want to have some names of some people that might be looking to sell or anything like that. To my understanding, it's kind of just like one of those things that it's not going to be my main gig because obviously I have my main gig.
Yeah, it's a side gig.
Yeah, it's a side gig. So as things kind of tumble through, rather than just kind of letting them fall between the cracks, things like that. Like I can take care of them and for all my family and stuff like that. And it'll also, hopefully help bring in a little extra income on the year-to-year basis,
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Yeah.
How much time do you plan to dedicate to the side gig?
This year, not as much as I'd like. And like an ideal world, if I was like, hey, next year, this is what I want to do with my real estate career. I'd like to be able to sell like between 2 to 3 houses for the year. right? Because again, it is a side gig, right?
Right.
But you still want to be able to maximize and use it, because otherwise, like, what was the point of paying money for the test? What was the point of
Right.
doing the hours for the test, right? There's just no point at all. And it's funny. There's actually a lot of people that do like real estate tests and everything. They don't make it. The real estate exam, like getting your license, things like that, is actually one of the most common things. But selling a house, I'm pretty sure, is like a very uncommon thing.
Right.
Yeah. Like most people won't sell a house in their first year.
First year.
Or
That's what
something
I've
like
heard.
that. Yeah. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
But I'm not worried. But,
How do you feel about the market right now and just kind of like how things are going?
I mean, the interest rates are high. So you buy a house, you have a high interest rate right now. You can always refinance. There's never going to be a good and a bad time to buy. All right. It's like if you were trying to invest in like the stock market or something, the other day I saw Nissan and Honda were thinking about merging. So went in and bought some shares of Honda, of course, right? As I should. Went up about $5 on the day. Next day went down $6. You know what I mean? Like,
you never know.
You never know what you're going to get out of the housing market. I think that right now it's actually more of a housing shortage. To be honest, especially in like certain areas. And for Vermont, where I'm from, we have a huge housing shortage over there. The problem isn't that there's no houses. There's just, that is the problem. I guess there is no houses.
Yeah.
The problem's not that there is no people. There is nobody to put in the houses because there is no house to have.
Right.
I know there's like a lot of loans and everything and stuff that are kind of like, help you get into buying houses and things like that. And if it's cool for you, I think the cool thing, like even to like just quickly segue to this, but talking about like what, like buying a house now in general, like versus like apartments or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely would be helpful to talk about because it's something I've been thinking about, like, and a lot of people at this age coming out of college or just, being in their 20s, it's like you want to move out, but it's like, what is the smart choice? Like, do you get an apartment and wait around a little bit? Do you get a house now? Do you wait and you get a house later? Like, what's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an apartment now?
No. Well,
Okay.
so I have a house off campus at school,
Yep.
but it's like me and my friends all kind of put the rent towards that.
But it's a full house.
Yes.
Okay.
So it is a house. After I graduate, I would love to get something for me and maybe a friend, but that's about it.
Maybe a
maybe a friend.
Maybe a friend.
But maybe just me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in my opinion, I actually think that apartments are a horrible investment.
Okay.
I think it's a horrible investment. The unfortunate thing is you have to have them, right? I feel like nowadays, and I mean, most people can attest to this, like even parents can attest to this. Are like, dude, my kid won't get out of my house. He's 27, like, and the unfortunate thing is even if he had an apartment, right? Now, let's say that person had an apartment, but they've been paying for it over and over again. Unfortunately, especially if they're a single individual right now, you got nothing. All
Right.
of your money goes towards that, apartment.
Yeah, you pay
kind
to
of thing.
live pretty much.
Yeah, you pretty much pay to live. So, and unfortunately, right now, especially like how mortgages are and how rent is for apartments, you're pretty much paying a mortgage for an apartment that you're not going to have for the rest of your life.
Right.
In my opinion, I personally won't ever own an apartment just because like I see it as like a money pit. I prefer to buy a house, start somewhere multifamily, kind of turn it into a rental or something like that. That would be like my first steps would be into getting into things like that because I just don't think that apartments are really worth. I mean, they're necessary.
Yeah.
But for like long-term wealth, it's tricky to kind of add them into the equation kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty difficult.
Yeah, I can see that. So are you still living at home? Looking to get a
I
house?
kind of live wherever.
Okay.
So because we travel so much, you know what I mean? I travel anywhere from Maine all the way down to Southern Connecticut. So like because I travel a lot, I kind of just do what I can. I'll stay with my parents in Vermont when I'm up there for shows, events, working, things like that. I stay with Brett Wilkie, my buddy down here in Massachusetts in Agawam. He's been grateful enough to let me stop in and invade his space for a couple days
Yeah.
at a time, So no, I don't particularly have a real place right now. Obviously, like I have places to go. I'm never
Right,
my
you're not-
parents aren't going to be gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess you could say I'm like
You're just bouncing around. You're not homeless.
no, I'm not homeless, kind of, but like give or take.
Yeah, okay.
Give or take. Yeah.
So your goal is to move into a house at some point, I could assume.
Yeah, I'm kind of bouncing between a couple ideas of like what I would like to do. One of them I thought about, maybe buying a house near a college, turning it into a college house eventually, or just getting a multifamily in general. That'll be probably my first investment is probably going to be a multifamily. It's going to be something that I will turn into as a rental. And especially if you're looking to build wealth in real estate or in general, I feel like your first purchase should not be your forever home. Like there's like,
Yeah.
like what, you're 21 years old, you're 22 years old, you know exactly what you want your house to be. Like impossible.
No.
You know what I mean? So your first one should always definitely be an investment in some way, shape or form. Even if you're just going to do it as an Airbnb, you're just going to do it as a, you know, a long-term rental or short-term rental. It should be something that you can transition into for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah. So obviously you're just getting started and warming up, but have you started to build any connections or networks so far in the real estate industry?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, so obviously Bonnie, that was kind of one of my first intros. Given that my parents already owned a business, I knew quite a few people already. Like,
Right.
Fortunately, if you go to New Haven, Vermont, where I'm from, everybody knows us.
Okay.
So I kind of had a little bit of an in that way as well. And then
Yeah.
obviously through Cutco as well. Like
Right.
as I'm doing my business, recently just got trained for like CGC and business gifting. Just to kind of preface what that means for everybody. Basically, I do my regular job, but I'm doing it with like realtors, mortgage brokers, loan officers, business owners, things like that. And that's really like kind of helped me elevate into that side of the world.
Yeah.
Was actually just getting into a different side of what I do for work.
Right. It's a whole other layer to the business.
Exactly, which is pretty cool. That's something I'm super fired up about in terms of just being able to already know a ton of people. Like I know I can pretty much call a couple people, but just be like, hey, I just had a question on this, or what do you think about this, and they just pick up, and it's pretty nice to know at least, or at least have people that are like that.
Right. Do you have any networking tips for people who are just starting out in real estate? Beyond knowing their whole town.
Yeah, not knowing their whole town is obviously, you should probably know your whole town. No, I'm just kidding. No, but just like in general, just like, don't be afraid to go out there and meet people, right? I'll go to like an association. I'll go speak in front of a bunch of realtors. I don't know if any of you guys know what B&I is, but it's kind of like a business group that like, they're like kind of trained to like give referrals to each other kind of thing. Other networking opportunities. Like I just went and did a bunch of networking opportunities. I mean, I'm just not really one of those people that's like afraid to say something to somebody either.
Right.
So I've just been fortunate enough that I've been able to kind of build those in there. But if you were like looking to like kind of like get into something, you want to, kind of make some connections, start with like your local people, right?
Yeah.
Talk to your family. Hey, who do you know that's a real estate agent, or who do you know that works with realtors, right? It just start like something as simple as that. And then what I found is like just mentioning it all the time to everybody.
Yeah.
So like recently I had an office that I was looking to sublease, and I just mention it all the time, and eventually you'll find somebody, right? But if you never mentioned it, you're never looking to actively, trying to get into that network, probably never.
It's not going to
Yeah,
happen.
you're never going to know somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely important to just continue to like put yourself out there with like the networking things you've been doing, but also
Absolutely.
word of mouth and just like telling the right person. You never know like the connections they have or what they're going to know. So
true.
you got to just be talking about it all the time. I mean, that's what I do with this podcast too. I talk about it all the time with people, and that's how I get people to come on and people to watch it. And like, who's going to know it exists or that you're doing that if you're not talking about it,
That's a good point. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good point by you.
Wow. Go me.
Like we said, right now, this is kind of like a side gig for you, but obviously the intention is having multiple income streams. So why do you
Absolutely.
feel like that's the most important right now in the economy that we're living in?
Well, number one, inflation, right? Like we're getting our butts kicked over
Yeah.
here by inflation, which is it's really unfortunate to be honest too. As you're growing up, you don't really get to hear a lot of the behind the scenes stuff or a lot of the money stuff, things like that. But I feel like nowadays it's actually the hardest it's ever been for young people these days to move up in the world, which is why, like I mentioned before, you see a lot of people still living with their parents, right? They'll never be able to buy a house because they're always paying for an apartment, right?
Yeah.
So just because of the cost of everything right now, you can't have one consistent income stream. I mean, you can, right? You certainly can.
But it's got to be a good one.
Yeah, it's got to be a good one. And like, just remember, you're not going to have any fun this year.
Yep.
So like that's kind of one of those things.
Brutal reality. Yeah.
Right. I think more importantly, though, it's important for people to have multiple income streams if they're just flying solo, right? If you're single,
Right.
like, and you're kind of doing everything on your own, it is the most important for you to have multiple income streams because you don't have two incomes coming in.
That's the thing.
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, and that's what it kind of comes down to. And even some people these days with two income streams, it doesn't, it
Doesn't even do it.
I mean, it cuts it, but like you don't have, it's just, you don't have anything extra left over. There's no
Yeah.
extra fund money. Really the biggest thing that kind of got me into multiple income streams is like when I grow up, when I have kids, things like that, like I don't want them to have to worry about anything, right? I want them to be like, hey, like we want to do something fun this summer. All right, let's go to Disney for a week, right? Just not have to worry about dropping those kinds of expenses. Whereas other people, they might have to plan for it. They might have to plan a couple years in advance. They got to save up, things like that. If I'm like, hey, my passive income overgoes what I owe in terms of, you know, rent and, you know, all this other stuff. Oh, but I have $300 extra left over. Takes me 3 weeks to save up $900. I need $900. No biggie, right? I just wait 3 weeks versus waiting, you know, 3 years, 30 years, whatever it might be. So I do think it's really, really important to have multiple income streams these days, depending on whatever it is. So
yeah. Do you have any tips for like saving up when it comes to that? Because I feel like a lot of people who come across a lot of money, you know, they don't go about it the right way. If you're the type that like wants to have a stable life for your kids and be spending it right, like how can you not jump ahead of the game when you come across like multiple income streams and spend it all?
First off, everybody's different, right? Like I can't give you guys a right or wrong answer here because it's just not possible. For me, what works really well is I keep it out of sight, out of mind. So what I do is I have a high yield savings account. The minute I get my paycheck, comes right out of my bank and goes right into there. And it does a couple things for me. Number one, it takes like 2 to 3 days depending on when I want to take money out of that high yield savings account. So it delays it. So now I'm not impulse buying, things like that. I'm not moving money back and forth. But it's also accruing interest.
Yeah, it grows.
It's growing while it's in there. And it's not like, well, if you weren't going to use it anyway, what, you want to make no money on it? I mean, I guess so. You do you, but I prefer it to make some money, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there is no right or wrong answer. What really works well for me is out of sight, out of mind. And then just kind of knowing your expenses as well. Like I have a bookkeeper. So I have a bookkeeper. She tracks all my expenses. I kind of look at my profit or loss on a month to month. I see what I have. I see where it's going. Knowing where your money is. I feel like everybody sees all of those like Rocket ads. I don't think you need Rocket to like save money.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like definitely know what you're paying for.
Right.
Like that's pretty, I mean, it's kind of logical.
Yeah.
I've always been pretty good with money. Even when I was younger, I don't even know, like maybe 10 or 11 or 12 or something. And my mom was like, gotta save some money. I'm like, I don't really want to. I want to buy some games. Right. But she was like, yeah, like you got to save something. So I was like, all right. And what we would do is we'd create an account under my name at the bank, but you had to physically go to the bank to get the money.
Okay.
Now I was like 10 or 12. So not really happening.
Yeah.
So in terms of like how long I've had a bookkeeper, it's actually not been that long. Only since like maybe May or June or something like that.
And you're 20, 21?
I just turned 21. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big one. Already in.
I got to tell you guys, it's not really that exciting. Like every time I turn 21 and now everything's just more expensive. Like I want to have a drink. They're all like, let's go out. And I'm like, but I could have a 6-pack here for like $5.
Like, so, come on.
Yeah, I was like, come on now. But so yeah, I haven't really seen any benefits from turning 21 yet, guys.
Well, so it's a little, all right, we're going on a tangent, but it is a little bit different for me because I was like on the late end of turning 21. So I was really itching to get there. And so I see the benefits, but it is getting a little bit expensive now.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive, man.
Yeah.
Like you go out and I'm like, I just want an old fashioned.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, $25. And I was like, wait a minute. Actually, let's maybe put the liquor back in the bottle.
But yeah, so just a few months ago.
Yeah, just a couple months. She's awesome, by the way. Her name's Dawn. Like probably one of the most like lovable, laughable person like you've ever met in your entire life. She's so great. Yeah, she helps me out with like a lot of stuff. It's been incredible though, just to see. I feel like a lot of times I didn't know where my money was going.
Right.
And I feel like you can get lost in translation with doing that, especially if you're like a big like online shopper.
Don't at me.
I think I've seen Reese's like Instagram reels. It's like, all right, big haul, 37 items, right? Something like
Whoops.
that. Yeah.
Hey, sometimes you got to reward yourself.
What is it? Shein? Temu?
Shein.
Is that the one?
I can't even promote them. It's not a great company.
Oh, really?
We'll talk.
Different time.
We'll talk.
I mean, just having a bookkeeper is great. Like I literally get an email from her once a month and she's like, hey, here's what it is. I pay her X amount per month and it all incorporates in there. I know my monthly expenses. I know what's coming up.
Right.
I know, what I spent on, for example, shows last year, parameters that I would want to know that if I didn't have somebody that kept it on a month-to-month basis, then it'd take me weeks, days, months digging through everything. One thing I will say is if you want to track stats like this, things like that, it's not just something you can do overnight. Like,
no,
not at all. It's a system. Get a system in place. That's a big thing. Like having a system.
Yeah.
Like that's just huge. Whatever that system might be, because like I said, it's different for everybody else. But yeah, I'd recommend a bookkeeper for 99.9% of business owners. So
Are there any expenses that you're trying to personally cut down on?
yeah, that's why I do keep the out of sight, out of mind. I'm horrible at spending money. If I'm like, oh man, that like the other day I was looking at a $500 like leather suede blue jacket. It was so nice. It was so nice. And then I had to kind of, you know, I what I do to actually like kind of help with that is I actually call friends. Like I'll call my friends. I'll be like, hey, what do you think of this jacket? They're like, it looks great. I'm like, I know. It's $500. They're like, nope, don't get it.
No.
And I was
You're like, you're right.
Are you kidding me? One thing that I want to cut down on a lot more of is actually energy drinks. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, for health purposes too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my body runs on caffeine. Like, you know, that Red Bull Wings commercial?
Yeah,
I think my car has some wings in there.
So we're cutting down on the Red Bull.
Yeah, Red Bull is a big thing for me.
Put the money towards the house.
I know, that's true. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. My next two big purchases, I need a new car. I want a house, so I'm going to be saving towards all of that stuff as well. But most of my expense is actually just like, it's either investing into my business or, you know, spend it on Red Bulls and
That's
and
pretty
gas,
much it.
you know? So I guess just one other small thing that I want to try to spend a little bit less money on is just making sure when I am becoming a part of associations and things like that, whether it's a realtor or a business association, it's worth my time.
Right.
Because those aren't very cheap. You're spending $400 or $500 on, you know, something that's not adding a lot of value to your business. Is it worth it for you every single year?
How do you personally like go about judging that?
At least in what I do for business, I'm not like some like big name brand. I'm not like AT&T. I'm not like T-Mobile where there's people like you see the name, you know what they do. For me, it's really important that I have speaking opportunities. So when I'm calling these associations, I'm, you know, chatting with them. Hey, just, you know, we work with a ton of associations. I'm pretty familiar with how they work. Here's kind of what I'm looking for, and here's how I can help you. Right. You want to make sure when you're talking to like the associations, you're benefiting them because to be honest, they could care less how they're benefiting you. Right. They just want you to pay the membership and be a part of it, which totally makes sense. That's the name of the game. That's their business that they're in. So I get that part of it, but just asking the right questions is really the biggest thing when it comes to associations.
Yeah. You have to show them what's in it for them or else they're going to hang up.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't really care.
less.
They're like, you're fishing.
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm fishing?
Not fishing.
Yeah. I'm going to like totally steal the show here for a minute from Reese. And I'm stoked. Reese, so you
Yes. Yes.
would you consider this like a side gig? Podcasting.
Yes.
This is like a side gig, right?
Yeah.
You make a little bit of money here and there, right? Give or
Sure.
take. Yeah. So like in terms of like multiple income streams, I guess like I'm curious, what do you do? Do you have just one income stream now? Have you thought about adding some extras or?
Currently with being in school still, I do just have like, I would say one, like nothing else that's like sustainable. I mean, I have my little side quests here and there, but but when it comes to like big income, yeah, right now it's just one for me, which is still kind of part-time around school, more full-time around my breaks, but wrapping up one more semester and I want to really go full-fledged at what I'm doing right now, which is in sales.
Right.
And then from there, once I get comfortable, once I've kind of made my spot there, I definitely want to look into some more side gigs. I've thought about real estate. I've thought about life insurance, the whole ordeal, something along those lines of something that can be done more part-time. Because I know that's kind of how you're going about with the real estate is like.
Yeah, it's like a part-time gig, you know, when I'm not doing shows and events, things like that. It's like it just something to kind of fill in the cracks. But the other cool thing, like with real estate, I guess you could say as an extra income, is typically real estate, you don't sell houses overnight anyways.
Right.
So it's a longer process. So it does help fill in some of those gaps when you are, you know, kind of slowing down a little bit. Reese, do you have a Roth IRA?
I do.
Okay, cool.
Don't even worry.
I was going to say, I want to make sure.
Don't worry. That's a different question. Multiple incomes versus like, am I investing my money? Yes.
Okay.
I'm putting it in places. I'm, you know, out of sight, out of mind with my money for sure. If your money just sits in a savings account, it's not growing. It's
you're actually losing money.
You're losing
because
money.
Of inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I had this conversation with someone earlier. Don't do that. Yeah.
Do that.
Put your money. Yeah. What would be like your advice in terms of like where to keep your money?
If you're looking, well, it depends on what you're using it for, right? If you like to have kind of almost like liquid cash kind of thing, you're good with the stock market. I'm not great with it. In terms of high yield savings account, there's a lot of them out there. I use Ally. They have the highest interest that they can earn currently. 4.something% is what you get annually or monthly or something like that. So that would be what I would do if you're looking to save money long term. I do it that way. There's multiple other places to save your money, but don't be that guy that like puts your cash under the mattress kind of thing. But
Right.
Yeah, those guys don't make money anymore.
No. Is it an app or is it?
Yeah, so Ally is it's just an online bank actually. I don't know if they might have locations, but I just move everything in and out as kind of accordingly. They have kind of money markets in there. You can get an app on your phone. It's obviously a website for you as well. It's simple. You just link it to your other banks, and you just move money kind of back and forth. But like I mentioned, like with Ally, especially like around Friday, Saturday, Sundays on the off days while they're not working, it could take you 1, 2, 3 days to get the money into your
Right.
account, which has been helpful to me, but also hurt me a couple times. You
Yeah.
just have to you want to make sure you plan ahead, right?
Right.
So one thing that I've started doing is like, I don't throw everything that I have into that high yield savings account anymore, because then you run into times like that where you need, maybe I've spent a little extra, or I'm going to be a part of this association. I want to spend some money, but I got to wait 3 days now
Right.
to go apply for that because I didn't make sure there was any money in my account. So having like a safety net is pretty exciting too.
Yeah.
If you don't have a safety net, that should be your first start. You shouldn't be saving money unless you have, whatever you feel comfortable to handle, whether it's your monthly expenses or just whatever you might want to have. For me, it's $1,200 to $1,000 to $1,500 in my account just
Yeah.
in general. Then that's not like in checking. That's not spending money. That's just what I want to have at any given moment.
Right.
That's accessible.
Let's talk about some of the first steps to building wealth and really focus on the Roth IRA concept, because I feel like not a lot of people take advantage of it, know about it, especially at a young age. It's important to start young more than ever. So what kind of advice can you give there?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, shout out my school, my high school from Vermont.
Okay.
Because they actually had classes to teach about like what to do with your money, taxes, things like that. I know a lot of schools that don't do that.
Most.
Yeah, shame on those schools.
Right.
Like, we should let's make a change for that. Actually,
Yeah.
Let's get some financial classes in
Let's
school,
do it.
especially if we're getting doomed to where we are right now.
I think that that's like one of the biggest problems is just like not a lot of people are taught it.
Yeah, nobody
You
knows
know?
nobody knows what to do. A book to read if you guys want to know just a little bit. Rich Dad Poor Dad. Do you read that one yet?
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I
so
haven't read it.
it's a great book. It's just a concept of similar to what you were just mentioning. People just don't know about it. This kid and his best friend's dad was a business owner. Kid's dad was like a teacher, went to college, things like that, and he wanted his son to go to college, but the friend's dad was like, no, you should just get into some industry, right? Go be a plumber, go do this, go do that. And they would kind of butt heads between the two. And it was kind of trying to draw that fine line between building wealth versus just kind of going through the system almost.
Yeah.
Number
right.
one, needs to be taught more.
Write it down.
Write that down. Without being taught, you can't really do anything. Number one, if you don't have a Roth IRA, definitely need to go get one of those.
Yeah.
All right. Just to kind of get an idea of what kind of a Roth IRA is. It's pretty simple. It's basically just like a mutual fund for the stock market. So let's say the S&P 500. Most people know what that is. That's a mutual fund. In terms of your Roth IRA, you pick whatever mutual fund you prefer. I use American funds. I do try to max it out every year, but I don't put in a crazy amount. When I first started, I was 17 in high school, and I just learned about it, and everybody else was like, oh yeah, this is so cool, we should do this. And I was like, I think I'm just going to go do it, because if I don't do it now, I'm probably going to
not
forget.
gonna do it, yeah.
Yeah. So I started out with, I think, maybe $1,000. I put in $50 a month from that point on. And it would just auto pull reoccurring from my account
Right. You don't
in
even
there.
think about it.
Yeah, and I think he showed me if I just did those numbers, it was gonna be 1.4 million or
Yes.
something like that. Stupid
That's
by
how
the time
they
I could
get ya.
take it out. And I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Let's do it.
And the cool thing about the Roth IRA is you actually pay taxes on the way in.
Yeah.
So you don't pay taxes on the way out. So it saves you a ton of money. And the other cool thing is you can actually pull from the principal. Basically, let's say you put in $5,000 to your Roth IRA. Let's just say hypothetically it occurred, $1,000 in interest. You have $6,000 sitting in that account, right? I need to take some money to go buy a car or a loan or something like that. I need some money. Well, you can go to your Roth IRA and you can pull from the principal, but you can't pull from the accrued interest.
Right.
Now, I don't recommend it, but it is one of those perks to doing a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA is you can, it's particular circumstances, it's got to be a house or a car or something substantial.
Right.
But you can pull some money out of there, which is pretty cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
I feel like people are just not educated well enough to know that it's growing in there, and that I just feel like people are afraid to send their money away, but it's still there and it's growing and
Right.
it's going to be yours. So I feel like that's a reason why people are just oh, I'll just keep it in my savings and
Yep.
it works.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And in terms of kind of the safest way to go about it, obviously you should always try to max your Roth IRA out.
Yeah.
It just went up this year. You can actually do $7,000 in now, but that's going to be your safest, most profitable, I think, in my opinion, personally, way to get in and start building wealth is going to be that. And I mean, if $50 is too much for you, that's not a big deal. You can make that number whatever you want, kind of thing. But just not doing it is kind of crazy because you're actually like losing a tremendous amount of money in the long run. I do $50 a month. That's going to change probably this year. It's probably going to be a little bit more. I recommend doing a monthly just because it kind of keeps it, again, out of place, out of mind.
Yeah. You recommend doing a monthly.
Yeah,
I do a 1st and 15th of the month, but
okay. Yeah.
Same thing. Out of mind.
Yeah, just kind of out of sight, out of mind. Whether you do monthly or not, you should always be throwing something in at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the cool things about it is when you are doing monthly at the end of the year, it's like, oh wait, I actually already put a $1,500 in. Like I didn't even think about that. All right, let's max it out.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I also think you'll find you'll save a ton of money doing it this way as well, whether you're doing it for a recurring payment, moving money out of your account into a high yield or something like that. I think really the best tip is out of sight, out of mind. For me personally, at least.
Yeah, that might be the title of this episode.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Oh man.
Kind of getting back on the real estate track, I want to give some investment tips on that side of things to people. So in terms of like evaluating properties, what is your process there to determine if it's valuable?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I don't do by myself, that's for sure. Whenever I am going to look into a property or do something like that, I actually have like friends and family that I go and talk to first, things like that, just to kind of like bounce ideas off them. Other people that are already doing something like this, because I mean, I feel like I know a lot and I'm pretty good at what I do and I'm confident when I do it, but there's always going to be mistakes, things like that.
Right.
So a lot of like, the really common ones, especially when you see like foreclosed homes, things like that, and you're trying to buy and sell those, you can run into a lot of problems. First problem is, especially with like a foreclosure house, you might not even be able to see the property.
Right.
Like you can't go into the house, you can't bug any of those people. That makes it really tricky. A lot of houses these days, definitely depends on the area, but they have a lot of stone foundations. Most of them need new roofs. When it comes into like looking to what might be a good investment property, the big things that I most likely look at are area. Can I keep a tenant in it? What type of tenant do I want? And what's like around it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what's my ideal kind of tenant that I want to have?
Right.
If I have a place near a school, I'm not gonna, I don't want to put some single dude there.
Right.
Like that would just be a bummer for him. I mean, he'd probably be stoked, but it'd be a bummer for everybody else. They're like, oh, like I have a kid. I'm looking for this apartment kind of thing. So similar to how I like look for shows and events, I search the area. I pull up what's around it, things like that. That also goes to helping when selling real estate, right? That's why you see like, hey, 4 blocks from your favorite pizza place, whatever it might be on things like that. So yeah.
So I know you're kind of starting this real estate journey in Vermont, but just in general, like how do you assess the demand for a property to determine what's going to succeed?
There's always going to be like trends, right? There's going to be people moving out, people moving in. When it comes to Vermont, unfortunately, it's a lot of people moving out, not a lot of people moving in. That's like Vermont's downside.
Yeah.
If I were to look for real estate in Vermont, I would look for an area that's pretty highly populated, that's not going to be in like the boonies. So there's like one of 3 areas I'd pick from. I'd pick Burlington.
Yeah.
I'd pick Rutland, and then like maybe Montpelier.
Yeah.
If you want me to be real, I wouldn't buy real estate in Vermont as my first house.
I would neither.
Yeah, it's just not a good investment
Burlington is the only one that I've ever even heard of before. So.
Oh, you don't know the other ones?
No.
That's so funny. Yeah, nobody knows.
Never
Vermont.
even been there.
Yeah, you've never even been to Vermont?
Never.
Wow.
I know. I haven't lived.
You know like Noah Khan?
I do. I know.
Yeah, okay. I just wanna
I'll
make
get
sure.
there someday.
Sure, it's a stick season,
I know.
Yeah, definitely area. The area is the most important part when it kind of comes down to just evaluating what you want for a property or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It also needs to like make sense for you.
Right.
Most people's first houses that they buy, like I was mentioning earlier, is not going to be their forever home. So it's like, hey, where would you maybe want to have a spot that you could hypothetically take a vacay to?
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think of things.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need a place in Southern Vermont. I need a place in Florida. I need a place in Cali. Like, I want to. It's kind of where I'm at.
You're just naming some places, but I'm curious, like where you'd be looking for an investment.
For me, right now, a place in Connecticut. It'd be nice to not have to drive back and forth to Vermont all the time. I have a place in Vermont. I can stay with my parents when I need to. I'd like to have a spot down here in Connecticut because I work a lot down here, or in the Massachusetts area, something like that. Ideally, I would like to have pretty much like just a rental vacation investment property of some sort wherever I want to go. If I'm like, hey, I want to have a rather than a timeshare in Mexico or something, you just buy a property in Mexico, right?
Right.
You build it up, you can rent it out, Airbnb, whatever it might be. You pick the dates you want to go, kind of go from there. I think it would be really awesome. I'd like to have a place in Maine, Connecticut, and kind of the main couple right now are Florida. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I feel like obviously a big platform for that is Airbnb right now. And so obviously it's currently trending, but do you see that trend changing over time?
I don't necessarily see it changing. I actually think it's a huge opportunity. Just like a question based off it is, do you think like maybe there's a housing shortage because we have all these houses that are just sitting there for Airbnbs?
Yeah, I've thought about that too.
I actually just happened to think about that.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
I
So,
definitely think so. I think Airbnb is like a huge business right now. And just to think about like how many homes you can find, and not even just homes, but apartments and whatever it may be on there, that is definitely causing a housing shortage.
when it comes to Airbnb, location gets very specific. You know what I mean? Like when you were asking me like, hey, where would be the ideal, spot to buy, property, something like that. If Airbnb is going to be what you want to do, that needs to be in your mind right from the beginning of the decision, because I'm not going to buy a house in Burlington to rent as an Airbnb in Vermont.
Right.
I would buy a house near the ski resorts. So in terms of like, will that shift at all? I don't think so, actually, to be totally honest with you. I've heard a couple people being like, hey, it's a horrible investment. Like, don't do it. Don't do this. But then I see like many more people just like making a drastically large amount of money. I think house hacking is probably one of the most common things to do these days in terms of getting into real estate wealth, whether it's an Airbnb or just a short-term rental, something like that, or even if you just get a place and you rent out, Airbnb, or they stay with you or something like that. Airbnb is something I'm still looking a lot more into. It seems like it's got like a lot of potential. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. It's not my number one thing just because I'm not like, all right, we're going to do Airbnb now, because I don't know enough about it. That's not going to be how I'm going to personally start.
Right.
But for people that like want to dive deep, like Airbnb is a good place to start right now, especially for short term. No matter how you get started, it's not going to happen overnight. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, unless a miracle happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Exactly. So just making sure that whatever you're doing, whether if it's Airbnb you want to start with, or, a college house, or just a straight up rental, knowing what you're getting into before starting, because it can cost you a lot of money. You buy a house you can't afford anymore, and then you can't keep it rented. Now you have the foreclosure house.
Yeah.
So that's not so fun anymore.
I know. And so for you said like your first step would probably be like a college house or something like that.
Yeah, I like the idea of a college house. I'm also very scared of the college house idea, because I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, if something goes wrong,
Yeah,
I think
if
I
they
gotta
throw-
be liable, right? I
mean,
must be.
Some part of you should be.
Some part of me should be liable. So I don't know. Probably not a college house right from the get go. Probably like a multifamily home, a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex, something like that. Because you do have to live in it for your first year for the tax breaks and things like that. And you get your first, or what's it, your FHA loan, your first time homeowners. They're not cheap, that's for sure.
No.
So
No, that's why you got to be careful.
yeah, Reese said she was going to invest. So yeah.
Yeah. It's coming. Just give me some time. All right. So in wrapping up, I want to know what your future goals are. I know we've talked about a few things you want to do, but really like where you see yourself taking off with just finishing your licensing exams and getting into this real estate world.
I'd like to kind of on average be selling at least as if I'm doing it as a part-time, between like 1 to 3 houses a year, just something small, just, making sure I'm still taking advantage of having a license, right? Not just having it sit there. Obviously I'm going to start building my wealth towards my properties, things like that. So I'll be looking at getting like my first rental and just quadplex, triplex, whatever I decide I might want to do. That's my big goal this year, just building what I have now, and maybe we'll catch up one day after I've sold a bunch of houses.
Yeah.
And you're still running your bomb ass podcast, and we'll see how it goes. I hadn't actually thought about this goal, but let's get one by like October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to make
Let's do October.
That's one thing about your goals. You got to make them specific.
Yeah, I got to make a specific goal, Yeah, they teach us that.
They teach us that.
But
So
yeah, so
October.
I'd say, yeah, October. Let's get
Let's say October 29th. You know what that is?
what's that?
My birthday.
Oh, is it really?
Yep. By my
Wow.
birthday, I'm going to check in. I'm going to say,
All right.
have we accomplished?
I don't think she's going to
goal?
remember. To be honest.
I will. But I think that's a great goal. Do you have any final advice for listeners on all of the investment real estate?
Yeah, just do your research.
Yeah.
Do your research. No one's going to know more than like what you can find online. Even if you were to take, a college class or something, a lot of stuff is just out there. YouTube, all that kind of, like, it's just there. So do your research. How do you network with people? Just start talking with people. Ask them about like, oh, so like, how does that work? How does the industry work? Right.
Yeah.
It's you won't know it unless you ask him. So, and if you really want to do it, you probably will ask him, or you just won't do it.
Exactly.
So to
You're
be
just
totally
gonna do
real, like
it.
if you don't want to do it, just don't talk about it.
So just talk to people, put yourselves out there. I hope that this episode was helpful to educate you guys a little bit, but definitely do some more research on your own. We're no experts over here, especially me, but Colin's just getting started. I'll definitely bring him back on when he is more of an expert down the line to share,
Expert.
some new and exciting things. But I had a great time having you on here.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think I should start one of these. I don't really know what I would talk about.
Well, part of this was to get him inspired to start a podcast.
Yeah.
So let us know if you think he can do it. I think you can do it.
Let us know if you think you can do it.
Big thumbs down. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye.